Today's episode of LITC Radio is presented by Patreon, specifically mine. Patreon is a service that allows fans of content creators to directly support them through a monthly membership subscription. So if you enjoyed today's episode of the show and you're interested in supporting myself and the freelance hockey content I make, consider visiting my page at patreon.com/LachlanTheCrease. I have tiers right now of $1 and $5, which gets you $5, the $5 tier, which gets you the access to all episodes of LITC Radio at the moment, although I am looking into a third tier, another tier, a $3 tier. The podcast may change over to that one. Just if for any patrons listening right now, I am looking into maybe making the radio, the podcast portions cheaper. So yeah, if you're interested in this and you enjoy the show, do consider it if you have the opportunity to. And thanks so much, and enjoy the show. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to LITC Radio. It's October 27th. Happy Halloween. What are you going as for Halloween? I know you can't answer me because this is a podcast, but I'm going as nothing. Because Halloween costumes are expensive. I am going to buy candy. It's much better. It's easier that way. That's the life hack, kids. The best part about being an adult around Halloween is that you don't have to go put in the work to get trick-or-treating candy. You can just go to the store and buy it yourself. I'm going to buy all the discount candy on November 1st. So if you see me at Canadian Superstore on November, you know what's going on. Welcome back to the show. This is probably the last episode of the month, and this is another episode I'm doing on YouTube. So, hi everybody watching this on video as well today. This is actually killing two birds with one stone. There's a couple things you might notice if you're watching the video right now. For starters, I have some jerseys hanging up behind me, because like I said before, Halloween costumes are expensive. What's also expensive is buying podcast equipment, like things to make the sound less crazy, to make it sound less echoey. So one of the ways I'm trying to hack the system a little bit is I decided to hang some jerseys up from some command hooks on the ceiling of my house, so it'll catch a little bit of the sound. It's probably not doing absolutely anything. You probably can't even tell a sound difference. But yeah, I also thought for the YouTube portion it would be cool for decorations, so we have that now. I've got my Vancouver Millionaires jersey from the Heritage Classic hanging up. I've got my Elias Pettersson NHL All-Star Game jersey up there as well. That's just one of the ways we're trying. We take things very professionally here at Lachlan the Crease Studios. I am Lachlan the Crease, Lachlan Irvine, and this is a kind of, I'm doing a couple things today, because in case you didn't check the calendar, today is Sunday. Unless you're listening to this tomorrow, then it is after Sunday. But you might have noticed no Sunday Crease came out today, and that's just because I've been really busy. And I thought, you know what, a good way to kind of, I don't want to get into the habit of this because I like doing the Sunday Crease column every week, but I thought a good way to kind of get the best of both today would be to do an episode of LITC Radio as the Sunday Crease. So this is your Sunday Crease for October 27th as well. So welcome to the show. If this is your first time listening, if you're not a Patreon subscriber, usually this is a Patreon exclusive podcast. Although I am planning to looking into the idea of possibly opening up more episodes for everybody. Which would be great. So yeah, consider this your Sunday Crease for today, and a free episode of the podcast. And yeah, why have I been busy? I've been doing some Vancouver Giants stuff lately, which has been really fun. Got to talk to some great players. Got to see the Giants play the Everett Silvertips on the weekend. On the same night the Canucks were hosting the Capitals, and we'll get to that. insane game in a second. But yeah, nonetheless, the Giants are in a bit of a they're middling. They're 500. They need some work, but they're getting better as the season progresses. So hopefully that bodes well for them. And yeah, I'm going to be going to a lot of those games this year. So yeah, be on the lookout for me in the press box if you're ever in Langley. But yeah, the Giants on Friday had a 2-0 lead, and then the Silvertips came back and won it. I believe, if I remember the score correctly, 3-2. The Canucks, same thing happened to them on the very same night. Only more disastrous, I would say. The Canucks leading 5-1 end up losing in a shootout 6-5 to the Washington Capitals. And oh boy. Again, I didn't get a chance to watch all of this game. I was, I wasn't paying my fullest attention, but one of the things I remember thinking about earlier in the season, and this goes back to games a while ago, was I was starting to get more trusting of the Canucks when it comes to holding a lead. I remember when I was at the home opener against LA. I believe it was 4-1. If I remember correctly, it was 4-1 going into the third period, and part of me is just like, oh god, they're gonna blow this, aren't they? They're totally gonna blow this. And then they didn't. They ended up winning 8-2. So I was like, okay, I'm feeling more confident. Then there was the 3-0 game against the game against the Rangers, where they were leading 3-0. They gave up 2, and I was like, oh my god, they're gonna blow this. And then they didn't. And I was so excited because I'm like, oh my god, they maybe have finally gotten over this. Maybe they've finally gotten over blowing leads. And then they just decided to, I don't know, they just decided to blow up in the biggest way possible with a 5-1 lead. A 5-1 lead with like 10 seconds to go in the second period. How do you? That's my question. How do you? It almost takes an effort, doesn't it? But either way, there's a lot to like. There's a lot to like about the Canucks right now. There's also a lot that concerns me. And that's kind of what this month has been. There hasn't been one game this season where I've been... that's not true. There have been a couple games this year where I felt like the Canucks... like we got a true statement game from the Canucks. But there's been a lot of questions. Like, a lot of games have ended with questions or, like, concerns. Going back to another game this week, which also works into this episode, is the 5-2 win over Detroit. They were down 2-0, score 5 in the third period and win the game. Bo Horvat has a hat trick. And, that to me was a big game because, the Canucks weren't playing well. The Canucks were not playing well against Detroit. They looked tired. They didn't look like they were prepared for the game at all. They end up having a monstrous third period and, finishing the game off and winning that game. And again, even though they won that game, there was that concern of, okay, I don't like how they were so out of it for 2 periods. I'm glad that they're a team that has the ability to come back in those sorts of situations, but I don't like how outmatched they were for the first 2 periods, especially against a team like Detroit. I don't love that at all. And I was like, but also, they got the win. I'm not going to complain too much. So, but yeah, there's that little bit of concern. And then fast forward to the game against Washington. They have a 5-1 lead. Yes, they get a point, and that's amazing. They beat it. They got a point against a team that, in a way, they probably shouldn't have. But also, the Capitals were playing the second game of a back-to-back situation where they'd already played an overtime game and lost. And yet, somehow... they blew a 5-1 lead in the third period, or a 5-2 lead in the third period. You shouldn't do that. You just shouldn't. I don't care how good a team you're playing. You shouldn't blow that big a lead in the third period. You just can't. That's not, the best teams don't do that. And it's really, really concerning that's how that game went down, especially because the 5-2 lead, the second goal in the late in the second period, which I believe the second Capitals goal, which I believe was Evgeny Kuznetsov with a second to go. Holy crap. That's it. They didn't look deflated. I will say this for the Canucks. It was more the Capitals looked empowered. They looked like they had woken up. But also the Canucks had some bad defense. There were some breakdowns. Jacob Markstrom did not have a great third period, which is too bad because he was playing so well for the most of that game. And then it just kind of all fell apart from all sides at the end. And it's too bad. It's too bad it went the way it did. I'm happy they got a point. I'm happy they're still finding ways to at least get points out of games, but in reality, they should have had both, and the Capitals shouldn't have gotten any, and that is a concern for me. There have been a lot of games like that this year where I feel like, yes, they're winning, but they're not winning clean. It's never a clean win. There's always something. There's always something concerning or a little off. And I'm not talking about Pettersson or Besser or Horvat, how they started off a little slowly this year. I'm not even talking about that. Just some of the ways that they would win. Like I go back to the Rangers game, how there were 20 minutes where they were completely outplayed by a team they shouldn't be getting that outplayed by, and having the goaltenders bail them out. The fact that there have been a lot of games this year, I felt, where the goaltenders were Markstrom and Thatcher Demko have had to bail them out, have had to bail out their teammates, and I can already count at least 3 games, which is why I wasn't one of those people getting all upset at Markstrom for the bad period against Washington, because for me, I don't think he blew it on his own, but at the same time, even if he did, there are still 3 other games that he stole for them already this year. So I think the scales are still very much tipped in his favor. So I don't see a point in getting too upset at him for that sort of stuff. Nonetheless, I like that they're scoring again. So let's go into the positives. The Sunday Crease is about positives and positivity and finding the good stories even in the shitty ones. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to swear on these podcasts. Oops. This is going on YouTube, but either way, we're gonna roll with it. They're scoring. That's a big deal. Vancouver, if you looked at the teams from the past, scoring was non-existent or very, very hard to come by at the very least. So the fact that they are going up against teams like Washington and putting up 5 goals, even if they do end up blowing those leads, the fact that they're getting the goals in the first place and from places that aren't necessarily where you're going to find a lot of goal scoring, like Tim Schaller had an amazing game against the Capitals, 2 goals. He's got 3 on the season. He's on pace for 24 this season, something nuts. He's on pace. He's on a great pace. Now after that game, Jake Virtanen had the 5th goal in the second period. And it's good to see players stepping up. It's good to see players that where the offense doesn't usually come from getting in on the action. Guys like Michael Furland getting an assist. Guys like Jay Beagle getting an assist. You just look at Jordy Ben, I believe, had 2 assists against Detroit. It's stuff like that bodes well. The fact that and I've mentioned this in the last Sunday Crease. The fact that even though Pettersson isn't actually starting that slowly. He's doing all right. He's got a good point total. If I can pull up the stats quick enough here, Pettersson is tied with JT Miller for 11 points in 10 games. That's not slow at all. But by his standards, I'm sure he'd actually tell you that. He feels he's started slowly. He hasn't had his best start to the year. It's still great. And Besser and Horvat have 9 points and 8 points respectively. It's great that their standards are so high. And I would say, because I'm imagining that in a lot of cases they feel like they've started slowly, that if you ask them about it, they'd probably tell you, oh, it hasn't been my best start to the year. The fact that they've been able to win so many games, even with those guys going a little bit cold by their standards, that's good. That bodes well. That's good that we know that this team can still find ways to win games even when their stars are having a rough spot or not producing at the level they feel they can. And that's good, because a lot of Canuck teams in the past, if the stars stop scoring, the rest of the team does too. And that's good to know that we don't have to worry about that. The wealth is getting spread around a lot. Everybody on the team has at least 1 point so far this year, with the exception of Louis Eriksson and the goaltenders, and Louis Eriksson only played 1 game, so that's a good... Having the scoring so spread out is new for the Canucks in a way, so it's great that they're finding ways to get the offense flowing even when their best players are having an off night. That's how you win in the playoffs. That's what playoff teams do. And so that's great to see, and that's phenomenal. The goaltending is still great, even though Markstrom did have a pretty lousy period against Washington. He's had 30 great periods before then, so it's fine. There's no reason to hit the panic button with Markstrom right now, and there's no point in hitting the panic button with any of it. With Markstrom, he's going to bounce back. He has these games every now and then where it just doesn't go his way, and he always finds a way to bounce back. Especially now, he's really found the level that he's at. That's the great part with the goaltending situation right now. Is in the past, people would have been like, oh, this is classic Jacob Markstrom, right? But now you look at Markstrom and you can go, okay, this is a one-off. This isn't what he's like. He's not like that anymore. He's going to bounce back. He's going to have a great game against Florida if he plays tomorrow night, which I'll be at the game, by the way. I'll be at that game. He's going to have a bounce back night. And so it's good, and it's good to have those expectations, and that's a big change from seasons past. Is throughout the lineup, people have higher expectations of the team than usual. People do expect them to make the playoffs. That might be asking a lot, even though they have been playing well. That's asking a lot. But either way, it could go either way for this team. They're a good group. I have faith in them to at least make some noise, and that's good. And that's a big change from the seasons in the past, and that's phenomenal to see. And yeah, with that, I'm going to take a look into the standings right now, because right now Vancouver sits right out of the playoffs, if we want to even talk about that mostly. They're the 13 points. They're tied with Arizona, who also has 10 games played. And we're going to spend a lot of this episode probably talking about some other teams in the NHL, because it is getting to the end of the first month. A lot of games have been played. A lot of different opinions are being made. Let me take a quick sip of my water, because my how it is. And sorry. And, there's crazy things happening. For example, let's take, one example, of course, is the Edmonton Oilers. 12 games played, 17 points, 8 wins, 3 losses, and 1 overtime loss. Is that the norm for the Edmonton Oilers? I don't think so, but I think they're kind of regressing to the means a little bit here, and, that's to be expected. But either way, good for Oilers fans that they get to see some winning hockey for a change. It's been a while. I said this on Twitter a while back, but I was like, it's going to be really funny, after all these years where Connor McDavid keeps losing the Hart Trophy, because the hockey writers are like, oh, you can't win the MVP if you don't make the playoffs. It's going to be really funny when they do make the playoffs this year, but then it's like, and the Hart Trophy goes to James the Real Deal Neal, and then everybody, and you just look at McDavid, the camera pans over to McDavid, and he's just like, he just nods his head. He's like, damn it, it's someday. He's got one already. It's not like he needs another one. He probably just wants a winning team at this point. He could care less about the Hart. If he won the Hart this year, and they missed the playoffs, I'm pretty sure his acceptance speech would be just trade me right now. Either way, it's good to see the Oilers are on a bit of a start. I think the goaltending is going to regress. I think the team overall will probably regress. But hey, good start to the year, 17 points. That could make a difference later on. You never know. A couple other things just to look into is the fact that Dallas has not had a good year. Good start to the year. I believe they are 4 wins, 8 losses, 1 overtime loss, 9 points. Canucks are 5 points ahead of Dallas, and Dallas has played 3 more games. Oh my god. I mean, I will say I'm one of those people that I don't think Dallas was as good as the bar they set last year. I think I definitely think they overachieved last season. I think there's a couple teams that overachieved last year that you're going to see hit the bottom a little bit or bottom out a little bit. Dallas is one of them. I don't see Dallas being as good as they think they are. And I mean, okay, I will say this. I didn't expect them to be this bad out of the gate. I don't think anybody saw that coming. Roope Hintz has been great. Miro Heiskanen has been great. I still see them as fighting for a wild card spot. But I definitely don't think they're as good as last season indicated. I saw a lot of people picking them, they're going to win the Central this year. And I'm like, no, I wouldn't put them there. I would not put them there. I wouldn't put the Jets there either. And the Jets, that's because the defense is just depleted. I'm so sad for Winnipeg. I like the Jets. They are usually the team I've been cheering for in the playoffs for the last couple of years. The Jets are 1 point behind the Canucks. I mean, they're still a very good team. They're just really lacking in depth on the blue line, and that's going to come back to haunt them. I think they're far and away, by a couple hundred games, by multiple hundreds of games, the least, experienced team of defensemen in the NHL. So that's not great. I think the Jets are probably still a playoff team, but it really depends entirely on how their blue line holds up over the course of the year. What else has been concerning? What else has been worth looking at in the NHL? Buffalo, of course. How can I forget about the current leaders of the National Hockey League, the Buffalo Sabres? Buffalo is a team that I need to see it to believe. With in the same case as the Canucks, I kind of need to see a little bit more out of the Canucks before I can really believe them as a postseason team. Buffalo is that to an even bigger degree, because last year, Buffalo went out and won 10 straight games, and everyone thought they were gonna finally march to the playoffs, and then they just completely collapsed. Now this year they don't have Phil Housley coaching, so that's already a big change, a much better improvement. They've got Ralph Kruger, who has been out of hockey for way too long. I really wanted the Canucks to hire Ralph Kruger when he was available. I'm so sad they didn't get him. I mean, we have Travis Green now. I'm not complaining. He has his issues, but he's a good coach. But Ralph Kruger is one of the more underrated coaching prospects in the NHL, and Buffalo snatched him up. And now the Sabres have won 9 games and only lost 2 in regulation. So I would say they're doing just fine. I'm trying to think. You might be hearing an airplane going over my house right now. Also worth noting, this is the weekend of Halloween, and before Halloween, obviously. And for some people, they've decided to shoot off fireworks now, which is odd. I think it might be Diwali stuff, which is a holiday. I believe that's this weekend as well. I mean, I hope it's Diwali stuff more than anything. I really hope people aren't shooting off Halloween fireworks on the Sunday before, 3 or 4 days before. That's just dumb. Hopefully it's just Diwali stuff. But either way, Buffalo, they have Jack Eichel, they have Jeff Skinner, they have a good core. I don't know if Carter Hutton can hold up over 80 games like he has for the first start of this year. I really do need to see it with them. Florida is in the playoff hunt right now, which is surprising because I'm going to try and pull this up relatively quickly. It might take me a minute, but I honestly did not think they were going to be in the playoff hunt from what I've seen of their goaltending stats. Because I don't know if you know this, but Sergei Bobrovsky has not been good. He has had even though the team is winning, he's had a rough go, and of course my computer decides to not just open the pages like I asked them to. I'm trying to pull this up as quickly as I can. But yeah, Bobrovsky has not had a good start in Florida, which, of course, I'm sure is wonderful considering... I'm sure nobody's panicking about that considering it's the first of, an 8-year contract worth $10 million per, something like that. Here we go. Yeah, he's got an .869 save percentage. Not nice. Not nice at all. He's won 3 games. He's lost 2. Has he only played that many? He only played 8 games? How many games have the Panthers played? 11. So who's played the other 3? James Reimer. Okay. Or no, not Reimer. Reimer's in Carolina. I have to double check who the Panthers' backup goalie is because I actually don't know who it is. But I would say right now the Panthers are definitely winning in spite of their goaltending, which sucks because I love Bobrovsky and I expect him to do better than this. I don't know whether or not this is just a long-term thing with him. He does hit a lot of cold patches over time, but I will say this, even in the bad years that he's had in the past, he hasn't hit below 800 since his second season when he only played 30 games with the Flyers. 899. He had an 899 save percentage that year. He had an 899, so he was a percentage point away from 900. This year has just been abysmal for him. Like, it's almost, he's added pretty much an extra goal per game, which is concerning. I think it's just a cold stretch. I hope it's just a cold stretch for him, but you never know. The Panthers have to hope he picks things up because they can only... the Panthers are a pretty a talented group. But they can only hold out if their goaltending is not performing for so long. They can only keep that up for a while before eventually it just all caves in. So you have to hope for their sake that Bobrovsky gets them to the promised land, because otherwise, with this Florida core, if they can't make the playoffs this year, oof, I don't even want to know. I hope they make the playoffs for that franchise's sake. Jeez, they really need it. Tampa Bay, I didn't know this. They're not in the playoff. They're out of a playoff spot right now. I didn't know that. But that does kind of make sense because, of course, Buffalo and Florida are stealing spots right now. Toronto is sitting just out of the bottom. We'll get to Toronto in a second. Tampa... It's Tampa. They'll be fine. I'm not going to spend too much time on that. Andrei Vasilevsky's had a little bit of a slow start from my understanding, but it's Tampa. They'll get out of it. They'll be fine. If anything, this is good for them. Like look at Washington. Remember the year they won the cup. They won the President's Trophy 2 years in a row. We're the best team in the NHL. Lost to the Penguins both times, and then everyone's like, okay, they're done. Whatever. We've got some other teams to look at now, and then Washington picks the year after they're no longer considered the favorite. They go out and finally win their cup. That might be what Tampa needs. Tampa might need the spotlight off of them, which is where they're at right now. I think they'll be fine. They're Tampa. I'm not too concerned about them. Who I am concerned about not making the playoffs is Toronto, because they have been losing in some very pathetic ways. It's not been good for them. They lost last night to Montreal. People are calling for Mike Babcock's head, and yeah, it might be deserved there. They're making some weird choices. He's making some very weird choices when it comes to the lineup and deployment. You have to wonder if he might be nearing the end of his time there, because they're really struggling. If they keep kind of going in this direction, I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up on the unemployment line by the end of the year. Because they have too many stars. Even with John Tavares out right now, he's injured. He'll be coming back soon. But even without him, they have too many stars to be floundering the way that they are, just clinging onto a playoff spot. They have too many good players like Austin Matthews and William Nylander and Mitch Marner and Alex Kerfoot and Cody Ceci to be this bad. Cody Ceci might be an indication of why they're bad, but that's neither here nor there. The point is, Toronto, when you have a lineup as stacked as Toronto's, you shouldn't be losing. You shouldn't have a 6-5 record. You shouldn't be near 500. There's no reason your team should be anywhere near 500. You should be light years ahead of that, and that is a concerning thing when it comes to the coaching. When it comes to coaching, Mike Babcock, he might be on borrowed time. He's got to find a way to right the ship now, otherwise he might be in trouble. Another coach who's very much in trouble, and I would say probably the one who's in the most trouble to start off the year, just right now, is Pete DeBoer with the San Jose Sharks. I watched today's game against Ottawa, which they lost 5-2. Oh boy, they don't look good. The Sharks look really bad. It's really concerning for a similar reason to the Leafs. Not to that extreme of that extreme a situation, but they don't look good. They lost to Ottawa and they look defeated. The goaltending is questionable. Martin Jones has off nights a lot. Aaron Dell has off nights a lot. And he did tonight. He was not very good. But Pete DeBoer is also one stubborn coach when it comes to his deployment, and it can come back to bite them in the ass on a regular occasion. And big thing for me today when I was watching this game, it was 4-2 Ottawa, entering the third period. Aaron Dell is gone. Martin Jones comes in. And that, to me, was a huge red flag when it comes to Pete DeBoer. I mean, a red flag for him from his point of view anyway, because here's the thing that I didn't actually know this until earlier in the week because again I write for Fear the Fin, shout out fearthefin.com, and I was listening to their game against Montreal, and their play-by-play guy Dan Ruzanowski was talking about how in the 100 plus games that Aaron Dell has started, I think it's or something, or in all the games that Aaron Dell has started in a Sharks uniform, he has never been pulled once, which is surprising, but it makes sense because generally speaking, he's the backup. He's not, he's usually playing like the second of back-to-back. Usually that's Jones' night to rest. They're not going to bring Jones in no matter how bad the game gets because it's his night off. Especially because Jones gets played a lot and he gets played probably too much. Nonetheless, third period starts, Dell's on the bench, and Martin Jones is in. And that, to me, after going so long without changing your goaltender mid-game, Aaron Dell out mid-game, what that screamed to me is that Pete DeBoer thinks is pretty sure he's on thin ice. Like, why, if you hadn't done that for so long, like if you'd gone that many games without pulling your goaltender out, your backup goalie out mid-game, why would you choose to do it in late October, in a game in late October, which in the grand scheme of things is probably not as big a deal as a game later in the year against a team that's not very good, against a team like Ottawa? Why would you bother putting Martin Jones into this game? That, to me, screams that Pete DeBoer really wanted to win right then and there. And as if almost he kind of is thinking he's coaching for the win, which is what you're supposed to do. But also at the same time, if your goaltender only gets so many nights to rest, you probably shouldn't play him. You shouldn't play him in this game. And what it screamed to me was he might think he might be closer to out of a job than we all know, because it is a game against Ottawa. You shouldn't lose to Ottawa if you're the Sharks. And oh boy, they lost big. They lost big to a team that's probably going to finish around the bottom. That's going to finish at least bottom 3 probably, and they shouldn't. They just shouldn't. And I think that's what's going to end up. I think Pete DeBoer, this might be it. This might be the end of the road for him. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets replaced this week. I'm not saying that's gonna happen, but it sure seems like it's seeming more and more like when it comes to his tenure in San Jose, and this might be something people in San Jose are probably want. It's not a matter of, it seems more or less like if things keep going the way they are, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And it could be by the end of this road trip. They have one more game against Boston. He might get the axe. He might end up getting the axe as soon as they get home. You never know. They won't fire him mid-road trip, but if they did, it would. They're not. I'm not claiming I know anything. I'm just looking at some of the clues I've seen and the way things have gone with them, and it kind of feels like he's on borrowed time now. He's already knows, and he kind of seems to know that he's on thin ice with the team. And I'm sorry for making ice puns in a hockey podcast. I'm very sorry. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else I should be talking about in this episode before I call it a night. Of course, what am I talking about? It's Halloween. Let's talk about the Canucks costumes, Halloween costumes, why don't we? Let's see if I can pull up a couple really quickly here. The big one being the Shrek costumes, and I have to offer my critiques on these. I believe I'm going to go to Elias's Instagram. Okay, here we go. So the costume. So if you haven't seen it yet, go to any of Elias Pettersson, Brock Besser's Instagram. Go to any Canuck player you know's Instagram. Oh, because you'll find it, and it's a doozy. Go to the Canucks Instagram page. I think it's there. So what we've got here is we've got Chris Tanev and I believe his wife. If I've got that. Yeah, I believe Chris Tanev's wife. As Shrek and Princess Fiona, with Thatcher Demko and Quinn Hughes as two of the three little pigs. Jake Virtanen is Gingy, the gingerbread man. Brock Besser as Lord Farquaad, I guess, and Elias Pettersson as Donkey. And oh boy, it's good costume. My first question is, did they make these? Did they make the donkey costume? I'm thinking they're all store-bought. I know the gingerbread one and the pig costumes are definitely store-bought. But I have questions about the donkey costume. Did they make that one? Did they make that special for Petey? And I guess the bigger question here is, why is Brock Farquaad? Why isn't he Prince Charming? Like, that doesn't make any sense. That's the whole joke. The whole joke with his hair is that he's supposed to be Prince Charming. But I guess he, like, I saw on his Instagram, he was, like, referring to himself as Farquaad, and I'm like, that, what? Like, that's not what I saw. That's not what I anticipated was going on here. But yet, here we are. They missed a golden opportunity to put him as Prince Charming. Totally golden opportunity. Missed. It's disappointing, but it'll just have to do. I do like Jake Virtanen in the gingerbread costume. That's pretty funny. Let's see. There was a couple other costumes around here. There was Bo Horvat. He and his wife Holly went as the couple from Grease. I know she's Sandra Dee. I forget what John Travolta's character. I'm just gonna say he's John. Bowen is John Travolta. That's what I'm gonna go with here, because I don't remember. I've only seen Grease like half times. I've only seen it. I haven't seen the full Grease movie of Grease. I've only seen like parts of it, like the end where they're singing that song that's copyrighted and I can't sing. I know Sandra Dee. I know her name is Sandra Dee, and part of me only knows that because I've watched Parks and Rec. I'm gonna go to, let's see. I'm wondering if the Canucks Instagram has any of the photos up yet. They do not. But nonetheless, there were some good costumes. I do like seeing the NHL players' costumes. I think Connor McDavid went as the Grinch, which was a little bit traumatizing, but still cool. Oh, another thing we should talk about. I guess I'll call this the last topic of the day. But quickly, yeah, Halloween costumes. What are you going as for Halloween? Let's make that the question of this episode. What are you going as for Halloween? And leave your comments in the comment section below. The outdoor game. The game itself was meh. It wasn't great hockey. It was a 2-1 win for the Jets in overtime. But I loved that they went to Regina, Saskatchewan. Yeah, don't laugh. Get your head out of the gutter. The Heritage Classic, I loved the fact that they went to a neutral site for the game. I like that concept, and I think that could really breathe new life into the outdoor games and some of the events. I've been somebody who's been clamoring for the NHL to go and do a game in an all-star game in Europe. Start doing the all-star game in Europe. I think that would be a really great idea, because the all-star game, it would give people in other countries who don't get to see the NHL as often the opportunity to see some of the best players in the world, and to see them in their home countries and not have to travel as far. And it would probably be more entertaining that way. They would be more enticed to go to an all-star game than, say, the people in the cities that get to see them all the time. And I love that the outdoor game, they're doing the same thing. I love that they're that they brought it to Saskatchewan, to an area that doesn't have an NHL team, because those places want to see NHL hockey. They want an opportunity, especially a regular season game. I could see them doing this in a lot of cities, particularly cities with big NFL stadiums. The one that pops in my head is Kansas City. That would be a place to maybe throw an NHL game, outdoor game. I think about places, just trying to think of a couple other places that don't have a team. Eventually, they will have a team, but Seattle would be a good place for a game once they get the team. And of course, they should send the Canucks there. San Francisco would really be great. San Jose obviously is right there, but a game at AT&T Park, where the Giants play, I was really hoping that's where they were going to put the last Stadium Series game when the Sharks hosted. They ended up going to Levi Stadium, which is fine, but it would have been way cooler to have it at AT&T Park, or I guess Oracle Park now. That's so dumb. That's so dumb. But yeah, there are good opportunities out there. There are good cities that don't have NHL teams, but have big stadiums that you could play those games in. That people would enjoy, and people would go to those games, and it would kind of breathe some new life into the stadium concept, because you would get a bunch of fans from new areas who don't get to see this kind of hockey all the time. And that's really what these games have the potential to do, is market the game in new parts of North America and the world, for that matter. And let's make that the other question, the final question for this episode. Where would you like to see what non-NHL cities would you like to see an outdoor game go to? I really like the idea of going to maybe Portland, or somewhere, or like a Kansas City, or there's a couple others out there that just aren't I'm not remembering right now, but yeah, there are places they're out there. There are great places to put a game out there. Ooh, you know what? Disney World. Put one in Disney World. That'd be fun. That'd be really funny. I think they have a sports complex out there. Just literally throw a game out at Walt Disney World. That would be hilarious and fun. And with that, I think that wraps up this episode. I'm not sure if I'm going to play us out with any music today, because that's copyrighted. But I will say, which is what I usually do in the Sunday Crease. But so instead, I'm just going to say thanks for listening. If you haven't, if this is your first time listening and you enjoyed the show, please click like on this video or on this podcast. Click subscribe on the YouTube channel. Make sure to share this with all your hockey fan friends. Do check out my Patreon, patreon.com/LockinTheCrease, for more content like this and for more updates on my website. LockinTheCrease.com is my full website. You can see my stuff on Daily Hive Offside Vancouver. That is Daily Hive hive.com/offside, as well as Fear the Fin for some San Jose Shark stuff, and that is Fear the Fin You know how to spell that. Throughthefin.com. An SB Nation site. So yeah, thank you for listening. This has been the Sunday Crease / LITC Radio, and thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time. Take care.